Okay, so I have a show at the end of this week, aka tonight, the day this video is live, and I last minute decided to bring the Octatrack. So that means we need to get some songs on it, and that's what I want to show you today, how I go from live with tracks that I'm either currently working on or I've previously finished, how I prepare them and go from live to Octatrack to live performance. We're going to be talking about banks, we're going to be talking about parts, patterns, stems, Ableton settings that'll mess you up, all that stuff. It's a lot easier than you think, but there are a couple little hoops that you need to jump through. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to do the same and go perform with your Octatrack and tracks that you've made with a bunch of your other gear, or no gear and just live, whatever it is. All right, let's get into it. And first, check out this dope track we're going to be using as an example with this Avalon bassline part that I have. So this is no Avalon just yet. And then I launch it. A little 12-step pattern. Right, I just need to grab a quick little 8-bar of this. All right, so looking at our session here in live, you can see that we basically have 8 tracks, which lines up perfectly with the Octatrack having 8 tracks, but that's not exactly the goal of how I want to set this up, because I want to be able to perform these patterns enough, but give myself some room to use 8 as the main track so I can put a compressor and do some more delay tricks on there. As you can see, I already got that going. So I'm going to show you a little bit more of how I'm going to set this up in a sec, but first let me show you how I'm going to export these stems to go into the Octatrack. There's nothing here on the effects track, which is great because that means I don't need to do anything with the effects. And I have track 1 here, which is just a 4-bar kick. There's a couple ways I can do this. I can either say, let's export the kick as a loop, let's export a single kick and redo it on here, or let's just find that kick sample in the Octatrack, which I most likely have. But just so I can show you a multitude of ways to do this, I'm actually just going to export a single kick. So looking all the way into here, I'm going to hit Z a couple times to zoom in, chop this in, cut this out, and now we have a single kick. And I'm just going to rename this Bic Kick, which is the name of this track, Bict. Like a Bic pen, basically, but I spell it wrong because I'm cool like that. So let's listen to the next section, which is track 3. It's just a simple hat. That's it. We listen to the open hat. Okay, that kind of works. What's track 7? Now let's listen to track 8. Okay, so this is actually a really good example of what I wanted to kind of allude to when it comes to getting tracks into the Octatrack. This is a bunch of percussion stuff, and I'm fine with the way it sounds, and I actually want these 3 tracks here that are soloed to live on a single track of the Octatrack, and I'm just going to have it be my percussion track. And because these 3 are enough of the same realm, I don't mind them just living together and being one thing. And this is going to give me space later on to do some more fun stuff on the Octatrack, which we'll get to. So with that in mind, I can go ahead and group this and just call it Bic Percussion. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm going to go ahead and lower that. And then track 4, I'm going to just call it Bic O hat for open hat, Bic Chords, and Bic Avalon. Now that we have these here, they're all different lengths, right? We have a single sound. We're going to have this little open hat sound here, which I'm just going to go ahead and take this section. Here's an important tip. Once you have a section that you like, just go ahead and hit Command J to consolidate that. But you can see that there's a little bit of a gap here at the beginning. I kind of masked this if we just loop this section and only listen to this. I masked it with a gate, so you can't really hear it. I'm fine with that. And now that I've consolidated that into one clip, I can actually drag and drop this out of Finder and basically straight into the drive of the Octatrack. But first, let's grab everything else. Looking at our piano chords. I like the length of this. It's enough movement across these 4 bars. Same thing, I'm gonna hit Command J and just consolidate that down. Now for the big boy, the Avalon, right? It's this giant loop that just changes the entire time. I wanna make sure it ends at one point and comes back in, okay. Okay, so it doesn't, and that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and zoom in here, and luckily enough for us, what we can do is we can expand this because we recorded a little bit of extra. Look in here and just grab this little section, go all the way to the beginning, put that there. That would have sucked if I forgot that. And now I can move this over, holding down Command. There we go. Let's see how that sounds. Awesome, I'm happy with that. That works perfectly for me, because if we listen to the ending of this, that's fine. There's a little bit of a weird trip, right? But that's only because we're listening to this one specific section. In the grand scheme of things, this is a 12-step pattern across 8 bars. So it's going to be this weird hypnotic movement, and you won't really realize this other little trip in the matrix, right? So we can go ahead and ignore that for now. I'm going to delete this ending part, grab this, and make sure we highlight the entire section here. Command J and consolidate that into a new clip. All right, Avalon, your job here is, whoa, your job here is done. And let's bring the Octatrack into the picture. All right, so this next step is actually super simple. Now that we've consolidated a ton of the clips, minus these 3 percussion clips, which we'll get to in a sec, we can just go ahead and grab this and drag it over into whatever folder you have set in your Finder. And I know that this is the Avalon, but I'm just going to rename this Bic Avalon. And I'm going to do the same for our chords. And again, I can't stress this enough, but make sure that you've gone ahead and consolidated your tracks by hitting Command J, or you can just right click and hit consolidate right here. And what that means is if I were to just grab, like, say, this loop here and put it into our Finder, if we listen to, look it, you can already see here, it's way bigger than this version. Why is that? Because this has a bunch of the extra, the recorded beginning, the ending, the outro. Like, just look at that. There's a bunch of dead space at the end, which we don't want to take up valuable memory space. But not only that, sometimes you might have this really long take, and in live, you're only looping a small amount. But if you were to just drag that out without consolidating that clip, it's going to take the entire clip and put it into your Finder versus consolidating it down to the specific start and end point that you've set, which in this case is great for us because it's right here. We already know it's going to start here, end here, and that's all we're going to get when we get this. So it's the exact loop according to live's tempo and all that stuff that we need. And here, check this out. I'm going to go ahead and consolidate our kick, even though it's just a tiny little sample. Bic kick. Now, the fun one, the Bic percussion. So I'm going to just highlight from here to here, hit loop. Now we're going to go and export this, and we're going to say export Bic percussion. Render start, render end. It's just exactly where we wanted it. It's 4 bars, file type, yada, yada, yada. We don't need the MP3. Bam. Important lesson. Make sure you don't have anything soloed, because when you do go to export this specific section, it will export it still, but be dead silent if it's not soloed or if something else is soloed. So just turn all your solos off, because when you go to export this, it's going to know what track it wants. And in this case, look at that. It's already jumping this around. We only want 4 bars. We'll just say Bic Perks. Save. Boom. So I did it here on accident with nothing in it, but now without the solos. So look, we got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. Great. We have our Octatrack connected here. We're going to go over to Project, System, USB Disk Mode, and USB Disk Mode is now enabled. It should pop up here. There it is, Octatrack, Audio, OT Song Parts, and we'll just say Bic. And now that we have that open, pull this over here, go to this section, Octatrack Live Set, grab all these, drag and drop them over here. Bada bing, bada boom. Get out of here. Now it's loading the project because I ejected the drive on the computer. Sweet. So now it's loaded up and the fun begins. So this is a brand new project with nothing else in it besides bank 1, pattern 1 and 2. I already loaded up my breadcrumbs track, which is here. Right, I was messing around with some of the scenes. Right, easy peasy, we get the idea. But that's on these 2 patterns. Now I want to add another song here on 5 and 6. Now, the smart way, or the pro way, if you will, would be to use parts, which is what we're going to do. Another easy way to do this is living within one bank on your patterns, just parameter locking what sample is on each track. But that gets a little cumbersome and a little confusing when you start doing a ton of this. So just to build a solid foundation, we're going to use parts. So right now, we're on pattern 5. And I'm going to switch to part 2. Now, the easiest way to explain parts is that you have 4 parts per bank, right? And we're in bank 1. We got 4 parts. Those 4 parts could be tied to any of the patterns. These first 2 patterns are part 1. 5 and 6, which is what we're about to build now, is going to be part 2. What parts change is what machines are loaded on each of the tracks. And this is really handy for us because those machines also encompass what sample is on that track. So now that we're on bank 1, pattern 5, part 2, this means we can now change up track 1 sample, track 2 sample, and not affect pattern 1 and pattern 2's sample. I hope you're with me. Hopefully it'll make sense in practice. But now that we're on pattern 5 and we're on part 2, I'm gonna go ahead and load up our sounds from this track that we just exported out of Live. So we're gonna go to a blank static track, and I'm specifically using static track because it's gonna pull off of the CF card. And when I'm playing this track live, I'm not gonna need to do all the crazy stuff that a flex track allows me to. Even though flex and static tracks are really, really similar, there are just a couple things that flex allow you to do that we don't need to get into now. So I'm just gonna stick with static. Now that I'm on a blank static section, hit yes. Let's go to BIC, which is right here, right? So we'll go to our audio, we'll go to OT song parts, and then BIC. Now, on track 1, I specifically want my kick. Now that that's loaded, I hit yes. And if we go and play this, that's the kick. Now remember in Live, I had that long loop of the kicks. Well, I just took a single kick this time, so I can just pattern it out myself. And I can do stuff fun live, right? What the hell? I never knew you could even do that. That's awesome. Anyway, what I was trying to do was not in that window. Go like this. And then just do stuff like this and jump it around when you're in the sequencer. Right? This will be fun to do live. Now, track 2. I specifically saved track 2 for claps, and this track does not have a clap, so to ease confusion on myself, I'm gonna skip it. Track 3. This is my percussion track. And ignore these. I accidentally forgot to take these out when I was transferring over, but our perks are right here. Now, this is going to be interesting because big perks were at 123 was the live session, tempo-wise. And we need to make sure that time stretch is off. But the best part about this is because that these are set to specific loops, we could technically leave time stretch on and it should be good to go. Let's see. And this was 2 bars. So we'll set this to 32 steps, turn this off, and get a better mix. And to get a better mix on this, we'll turn up our amp. That's good. Now let's test the theory, right? We're at 124. Yeah, decent time stretch. Okay, cool. We'll go to 123 to keep it safe for now. Next up. And on track 4, we'll put it right here at the beginning. Now, I'm always putting the sample triggers right at the very beginning because when I exported these, they already have the air at the beginning needed to be exactly where I want them to be in the long run. And you can see this is just a single bar, so we probably have to put another step in. Yep, there we go. Interesting thing here. You can hear that this gets cut off, and you might be wondering, wait a minute, didn't you have a gate in Live? And the answer is yes. But when you consolidate clips in Live, for example, this one here, it does not take into account all the EQ settings that you have set or any of the devices that you have down here. In this case, our gate. If we did want that to happen, you would have to right click this, freeze the track, right click it again, and then flatten the track. Now it got rid of all our devices, but if we zoomed in here, you can see that that gate is actually working in action. And you can just go ahead and consolidate this again and drag it over into that same section. And now we're gonna say BIC hat, we're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna say BIC open hat, bam. You know what, just to be safe, I'm gonna go ahead and eject this drive. And I'm just gonna put this on using my CF card reader. I'm gonna double check and make sure that all those samples are there and nothing got corrupted. Because earlier you saw those weird like underscore samples that were all errored. I wanna make sure that those aren't in there and that I don't accidentally use those. Okay, so this is all in here. And just to be safe, I'm gonna delete them all, grab all these and drag them back over. And you know what, while I'm here, I'm realizing that this Avalon has a bunch of different stuff on here that I wanna make sure gets in there. So I need to go ahead and do the same thing. Freeze and flatten. Now, here's another super crucial thing. Make sure that your interface or whatever it is set to 44.1, because otherwise you're going to run into these weird slight stretching, almost like a frame rate issue, where if you're exporting at 48, the Octatrack wants to hear 41 or 44.1, and it's going to slow that sample down at the same pitch, and you're going to run into some funky issues. So just for now, we're going to go ahead and set this to 41, and I have my settings here in total mix set to 41 and 41 here. Now when I go and export these, bam, bam, they'll be proper, and they won't have to do any weird time stretching to begin with, and they'll just be at 123. All right, check this out. We're gonna go ahead and set this to big chords. We'll put a single step here, and this is a 4-bar loop. So we'll set this to 64 steps. We'll make sure that there's no other triggers here, and we'll turn time stretch off. We're at 123. There it is. Easy. A perfect loop, right? But with time stretch off, if you were to change the tempo, it's gonna play at fast speeds. So you might want to leave time stretch on auto in case you do change it. And it will just try to find the best way it can to change tempo with you. And this is particularly good if you're gonna be like me playing with the CDJ and you might need to keep moving the tempo around. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it to auto. Now, the super fun, super simple way to get this crazy Avalon 16-bar pattern to play on this limited 4-bar pattern device. It's surprisingly really simple, but when I figured it out, I felt like I cracked the code to the universe. So we're gonna go to track 6, which is where our bass will be. And we'll load up that bass. Big Avalon, right? There it is. Check this out. We're gonna put a single step here. Now it'll play. But the problem is, when it gets to this 4-bar part, it's gonna reload. And we don't want that. We want it to play the entire evolving pattern. How do we get to do this? If we go to our record enable section and go back to the first page where the step is at, hold that step, press this, we can access a trig condition. And the one that we want, I forget the proper names for these, but we want to do 1 out of every 8. And what this means is it's going to play the first time out of every 8 times this goes around. And now that I'm thinking about it, this is actually for a 32-bar pattern, because once out of every 8 times the 4 bars on this Octatrack play. So we really need it to say 1 out of every 4 times. That way it's going to play once and just skip the next time, skip the next time, skip the next time, and then play again. And that'll be 16 bars, because we have 4 bars times those ending number, which is 4, which is 16. Now, it's not going to re-trigger here. Look, we can watch our AED. Watch, where is it at? See, look, we're on the second time around. This is 8 bars. Now we're doing 12 bars, 13, 14, 15, 16, or I'm off by 4 bars, but you get the idea. Now watch, when it gets to the end, it's going to re-trigger again. Here we go. There it is. And that little hiccup that I told you about, remember? We already knew that that was coming. So now we have this dope playable version where we can go onto our master track and do some like filtering. Right, maybe go to this and say, instead of a delay, we'll do dark reverb, send it, turn the time up. Right, maybe on B, we also want track 1 to be quiet, which is our kick. And then this track 4, we want that to be filtered down. Up, bandpass like crazy. And then maybe for these little percussion things, they're set to dark reverb, but let's do a delay instead. And maybe even speed it up just a little bit. Yo, this is gonna be the sickest, most playable thing ever, right? Now on track 8, I wanna change up. This is gonna be set to main, so all the tracks are going into this. We're gonna add a compressor, because usually I would end up taking something like the auto boom or an RNLA or the analog heat out, but in this case, I just want to take the Octatrack by itself, so I'm going to use the compressor on here. Mix this all the way up. We're going to go ahead and play this. I like this mix, it's pretty decent. Turn our threshold down a ton, at least for me. I like it pumping. Turn our ratio up. Attack down, gain up. Oh, you can hear it starting to break. Pro tip, when you're playing live, you can use this gain as kind of like, if you're set 8 to be the main track out, you can use this gain as like an overall volume adjustment, but be careful because you might clip a couple things and the sound guy ain't gonna be too happy, or sound gal. There it is. Now I can go into the mix. Take a couple of these things out, right? Maybe land here and then build another scene real quick on the fly. Track 6, which is our bass, volume down. On actually, you know what? We'll clear that for now. I'll say track 4 or scene 4 will be volume down of this, so we can fade out our bass. Now, one thing that's great about using parts and then using these mutes and having everything be in the same section where you know it's going to be. I know that track 5, if I go and I mute track 5, it's going to mute the chords, right? Oh, my bad. If I go and mute track 5, it's going to mute the chords. But if I jump to another pattern, I know that my chords are also going to be there. So we can go Mr. G style and say, all right, we've muted that out. We'll build another scene, fade out our hi-hats. Mute our hi-hats. Come back here, go here, clear this scene, go to a random scene like, I don't know, let's just do 2. We'll make sure 1 and 2 always stay empty. We'll clear that there. Now everything's muted except track 5. Track 5, I'm gonna go and send it to the delay on here. Right, crowd goes nuts. And then you can just jump to another pattern and everything will be muted except for the chords on that next pattern. So watch this. We'll go here. And now you can see I had some weird scene on this bank, right? I was on 16. But it's a decently smooth transition. And then here you start bringing stuff in. And you move on to the next track. Easy as that. Now we just need to do this a bunch more times, but I won't bore you with that. I appreciate you, my friends, so much for sticking around, for hanging out. Until the next time, you already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. This is working out better than I thought. Bring in the bass. Yeah. Oh, it's falling off. I don't have time stretch on this one. There we go.